watching Rogers TV.
Welcome to Money Matters with Shannon Jackson, the personal finance show focused on moving you forward financially. On today's show, we're focusing on money matters, particularly how you can save more and make your hard-earned income go further. And let's face it, considering the current economy, we really all need that. My guest today has some great advice for you. He's a former business journalist, speaker, finance educator, and author of the recently released book, Ask Questions, Save Money, Make More: How to Take Control of Your Financial Life. Matt Shultz, welcome to Money Matters, and thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Before we get into the advice, which I know our viewers are going to be eagerly waiting to hear, can you just talk a little bit more about yourself and your background and really the inspiration behind your book?
Sure. In my current role, I'm chief credit analyst at LendingTree. So basically, my job is essentially to do interviews and provide advice and be an observer of kind of what's going on in personal finance today and what people are doing, what people are thinking, how they're spending their money, and that sort of thing. But unlike a lot of people in my role at other companies, I'm not an economist. I'm not a former banker. I've never worked in finance or anything like that. I'm a journalist by trade, but I'm also a guy who had $10,000 in credit card debt and a payment on a brand new car when I was in my 20s, largely because of my own bad decisions. And it took me a long time to get out of that. But I distinctly remember what that was like. And now my mission is basically to help people make better decisions than I made.
So it sounds like that's really the inspiration behind your motivation really to write this book is from your personal experience going through it yourself.
Yeah, no question. And it's one of those things where as I was writing the book and I interviewed more than 110 people for the book, it was so interesting hearing other people's experiences, but also talking to people like therapists and counselors and those sorts of things to get a little bit into the psychology and kind of some of the thought behind why people, including myself, make some of the decisions we make with money. And one of the things that I really wanted to do with the book was to kind of anticipate people's objections or people's concerns when it comes to asking for some of the things I talk about in the book. And in doing that, I certainly learned some things about myself too.
And so you mentioned there a little bit about your personal experience. You had the credit card debt, you had the car payment, and you mentioned, you were in your 20s and you were making some decisions about that. Do you find that those decisions that you were making during that time, was it perhaps as a result of sort of lack of education or lack of knowledge in those decisions?
Oh, there's no question. Yeah, I didn't know really what I was doing. My parents didn't talk a whole lot about money when I was younger, and I didn't really quite know fully what I was getting into. And the truth is that when you don't have the right information, or when you're a little bit confused, or when you kind of jump into things that you don't necessarily understand, it can make things really hard on you.
Well, your book is going to be one of those great resources for people to turn to. Some are calling it the ultimate guide to asking for what you want in every financial situation. And I think it really does come down to that, for asking for what you want, because when it comes to your money, you really are the best advocate of that. Can you speak a little bit more about being an advocate for yourself, especially when it comes down to your money?
Absolutely. Yeah, the whole book revolves around a relatively simple message, which is that you have way more power over your money than you realize. And that's true whether you're talking about talking to a credit card issuer, or to the gym that you're trying to join, or to your elderly parents, or to your friends, or to a handyman, all those sorts of things. The reality is that you can advocate for yourself. You can ask questions that will help you. And the basic idea behind it all is the concept of lifetime value, which is basically that the longer you stick around, the more money businesses make off of you. So it's in their interest to keep you around. And that's why the success rate tends to be so high for things like asking to have a late fee waived on a credit card, for example, because if that credit card issuer waives that $40 for you, or $30, that's a big day for you. That's a big win. And it's going to keep you in the fold and keep you spending money to where the bank makes money off of you. So they give you that $40, which is a grain of sand on the beach to them, and it keeps you happy. So once you kind of realize that banks and other businesses see you that way, it changes your mindset and helps you realize that you are coming at this from a position of strength rather than a position of weakness.
I completely agree with that comment. I tell clients on a regular basis that the bank is a business. It wants to keep you as a client because they are making money off of you.
Yeah.
And so I agree with your statement there. Now your book, and we're going to have some great advice coming up in the second segment about talking about those negotiations and things like that. So we look forward to that. Now your book focuses on 7 key areas of life, and they are credit and debt, healthcare, housing, shopping, travel, work, and relationships. And it sounds like you've really got it all covered in all of those 7 categories. But can you share why you chose those 7 key areas?
I chose those 7 key areas because they more or less encompass almost all of life, right? And it's the idea that some of these simple concepts that we talk about, and the idea of advocating for yourself and speaking up for yourself and asking for help and asking certain questions, isn't just about dealing with banks, or doctors, or other types of businesses. It spills into your personal relationships with friends and family and things like that, and into your career for sure. So I chose those subjects basically to emphasize how impactful this can be in all aspects of life.
And a lot of the skills that you talk about in your book as well, with advocating for yourself, specifically for your finances, those skills, like you just mentioned, can spill over into those other relationships, like handling conversations with your healthcare providers, with your family members, and things like that. So those 7 categories really do envelop the whole our whole lifestyle. So I think that's really great. Now, your book is described also as a money manual because you include the questions, success stories, risks, of course, and also all the tools to guide the reader through the pros and cons of each of those categories. And you also include a fill in the blank script for the reader. Can you talk a little bit about this and how this can benefit anyone who reads your book?
Absolutely. Yeah, that was one of the key aspects of the book when I wanted to create it. And again, it gets down to it gets down to empowering people to push through their nervousness and their reluctance to do these sorts of things by giving them all the tools they need. And really, the ultimate tool is a script that literally tells you what to say. And I went ahead and did that for all of the various scenarios. Some of them are really simple, some of them are just a few lines. Others of them have a pretty complex decision tree that you may have to navigate through. But all of them are designed to help you feel more comfortable going into that conversation and to ultimately tee you up for more success.
One of the comments that is on your website, and it really resonated with me, it says, you have more power over your money than you realize. Put more of it in your pocket and keep it there. Sometimes all you have to do is ask. And you actually mentioned this right at the top of the show. And it seems like a simple concept, but for, I think, the majority of us, asking those questions is really difficult. Can you talk about why you think we feel this anxiety towards having those conversations?
Because they're scary. They're scary to me, and my job is to get on camera and talk to people and those sorts of things. But I'm still a guy who gets nervous raising his hand in a room full of people, even if I know all the people. People don't like to be vulnerable. People don't like to put themselves out for potential rejection. And also, people don't like to feel dumb, and they're very concerned that they might. And especially when you're talking about places like talking about a bank or talking to a mechanic or talking to a doctor, you assume that these people are smarter than you, have a whole lot more knowledge than you, and you don't want to sound dumb. But the truth is that sometimes it's really, really important financially and otherwise to be willing to be vulnerable, to be willing to ask those questions. And it can really save you money and really help you overall.
And that's really the most important part. Is it's about taking control of your own finances, having the confidence to do that. And then as a result, you are going to be able to save more and perhaps even earn more through this whole process. I meet with clients on an every day, and they're you can see sort of the uncomfortable fear when they come in and meet with me to talk about their unmanageable debt and the options that might be available to them. And so just having that first conversation, I think, gives a whole lot of people that initial surge of confidence to say, okay, I've done it. Now I can do it again in other aspects of my life. And so if you're ready to be more financially savvy, powerful, and confident when it comes to your money matters, Matt's going to have some more great advice for you when we come back after the break. So stay with us.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
Focus better.
Partner better.
Sleep better.
Breathe better.
Love better. Work better. Friend better. Unwind better.
Everything gets better when you get active.
Welcome back to Money Matters with Shannon Jackson. My guest today is Matt Shultz, speaker, finance educator, and author of the recently released book, Ask questions, save money, make more. How to take control of your financial life. And his book is being described as a must read for anyone who is looking to save money. And of course, who doesn't want to do that? And before the break, we talked about the 7 key areas of life that you focus on in your book. And we're going to break some of those down now and discuss them in a little bit more detail. So we're going to start with the credit and debt, because we know that there are many people that are struggling to make ends meet right now. And I meet with them on a regular basis, as I mentioned before. And people are turning to credit to keep up with the rising costs. And as a result, they're increasing their level of debt sort of on a consistent basis. And as I said, I definitely meet with people. I'm seeing more young people come in and meet with us right now. Also, there have been a lot of people that I've met with who are struggling with health issues, or something unexpected has happened, and they've sort of limited their ability to earn an income, and they've had to reduce their expenses and rely on credit and things like that. So Matt, you encourage your readers to build their confidence and ask for better rates and negotiate that lower interest from anything right from your mortgage payments right down to your credit cards. So I'm going to start with the first question. It may be obvious, but why is it when it comes to banks, credit card companies, that we as consumers just kind of roll over and accept that first interest rate that's offered?
Part of it is that we don't realize that we can ask for better. We assume that there's some grand reason why we've been assigned the interest rate that we have, and that it's set in stone and there's nothing we can do. But the truth is that that is definitely not the case. Did a survey at LendingTree last year that showed that about 76% of folks who asked for a lower interest rate on their credit card in the past year got one, and the average reduction was about 6 percentage points. It's a really big deal. And when you talk about that high of a success rate, it means that it's not just folks with perfect credit scores and long track records and spotless histories who are getting their way. It's regular folks who really need the help. And even though it can be really intimidating and nerve-wracking to make that call and ask that question, it's really important, because it can save you some significant money.
Now, can these negotiations, or asking for a better rate and things, can that be done in the middle of the term of the loan?
When you're talking about a credit card in particular, it can really be done at any time. I mean, you shouldn't do it, a month after you get the card necessarily. But if you've had the card for 6 months to a year, you are well within your right to be able to ask, especially if you're somebody who has good credit.
And you mentioned too, and we talked about this before, that intimidation of just asking that initial question can be difficult. And you just mentioned as well, with the statistics of 76% of people that ask for it get it. And with an average of 6 points, you just said there, which is that's a big difference. If your initial interest rate is 22%, and it can go down significantly. So that's sort of really encouraging for people to hear. Now let's sort of turn to, how can we better negotiate these terms? How should we be prepared to have that initial conversation?
Well, it does require a little bit of legwork generally. You can take a little bit of time to look in your email and in your snail mail to see if you've gotten any offers lately and what the rates on those cards might be. Or you can go to your current credit card issuer's website and see what the interest rates they're charging on the card that you have, for example. Or just other, you can look at other sites like LendingTree and plenty others that are out there, to kind of see what's available and what you think you would be able to qualify for. And once you have a feel for that, then you can call up your card issuer and say, hey, I've had your card for a while. I really like it. I've never missed a payment, but my interest rate is 26%, and I've just been offered this card at 21%. Is there a way that you can work with me? And obviously, there's no guarantee that you'll get your way, but the odds are better than you might think that you will. And also, the truth is that it really can't hurt to ask.
So there's a little bit of homework that goes into making that initial ask, but you
Sure.
also encourage your readers to practice or rehearse. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's so important. I mean, the best athletes, the best singers, the best orators, they all practice nonstop to be better at what they are, what their passion is. But we don't necessarily think to practice some of the basic things that we struggle with. And one of those is negotiation. And what you can do is you can get with a trusted friend or relative and say, hey, I'm going to make this call. I'm a little nervous about it. Would you mind kind of helping me run through this, just pretending to do the call? And if you do it a couple of times where the first time everything goes perfectly, the second time you maybe throw up a little bit of a roadblock or two, and then the third time you have the conversation, have the person who you're role playing with really kind of be tough on you, that can really make a big difference, because you obviously can't predict exactly what the person is going to say on the other line. But if you've at least done kind of a dry run of it, it can really help you kind of understand that, okay, I've been through this, I've done it once, it was nerve-wracking, but I made it through. I'll be okay going into the real conversation. It can make a big difference.
Well, that covers sort of the save more part of your book's title. So we're just going to shift then to the make more part of your book, because obviously a big part of our financial life is tied to our income, which is the salary that we receive from our job. And I want to focus on that now, specifically about advice if you are negotiating your salary. Now, I personally have failed at this previously in the past. So I'm interested to hear what you have to say and what your advice specifically is. If any of our viewers are heading into a salary negotiation with their manager or with their boss, how can we prepare for that question, or even a new interview where you're asked the question, what is your salary expectation?
Well, one of the best things you can do is take advantage of the trend towards salary transparency that we've seen in recent years, which is an amazingly good thing for employees, because people are generally more willing to talk about their salary now, more willing to share face to face, more willing to share online, all that sort of thing. So that means that you will be able to arm yourself with a little more information specifically about your industry, and maybe even down to the role that you are applying for. So if you talk to people within your company, or you search online to find information about exactly what the expectations are for that particular role, it can make things less of a guessing game. Because one of the things that I grew up hearing forever in job negotiations was, he who gives the first number loses, meaning that you don't want to put your cards out there because you may end up undercutting yourself unintentionally. But now so many people who I've spoken with have said that that's not the case. And what you need to do is go in with a number that you've researched, that you know represents what your worth is, and be bold with it and say, this is what I'm asking for, this is what I think is a proper number, and then be silent and let them respond how they will.
And I think we used to have that mindset of, if I come in too high, then I'm not going to move forward in the interview process and I won't be considered for the job. Has that
Yes.
mindset changed now?
I think it is certainly changing, and yes, that is kind of the flip side of potentially undercutting yourself. There is the idea of taking too big of a swing. There is certainly that risk, but what you have to do is make sure that even if that big swing that you're taking gets a negative reaction from the person at that job, if you are confident enough that that is what you are actually worth and what you should be paid for that job, it still can make sense to stick with that number. And because maybe them rejecting you is an indication that they wouldn't value your worth enough. So maybe that's not a place you need to be.
Are there any other asks other than that salary negotiation? Is there anything extra that a person can ask for when they're talking to their employer?
Oh, there's so much that you can ask for. And especially now, over the last 5 years where hybrid work and remote work has become such a thing, that's a really big deal. And that's certainly one of the things that's most talked about. But when you can also negotiate things like paid time off, and retirement fund matches, tuition reimbursement, things like that. There's so many different things. There really are very few things that you can't negotiate. You may, depending on your position, you may not want to step up and negotiate your severance agreement in advance. That's maybe a C-suite sort of thing. But most everything else, it's certainly at least worth bringing up if you have a legitimate concern or a legitimate question about a specific aspect of your benefits.
Now, we only have a few minutes here, Matt, but do you have any final thoughts for our viewers? Any final advice that you can give them?
Well, really what I would say is just remember that you have way more power over your money than you realize, but you often have to wield it. People aren't going to come to you and say, here, take this lower rate, or here, take all of this money, or hey, son or daughter, let me tell you about my financial situation so you don't have to worry about me. These things really matter, and you really need to take these steps. And the idea behind the book was to help people be bold and empower them to have these conversations that really make a difference, because they can be difficult, they can be scary, but they're really necessary.
Well, Matt, I really want to thank you for being here and taking the time to share your advice. And I encourage everyone viewing to go out and buy your book. And I also want to thank all of our viewers for watching. Until next time, I'm Shannon Jackson.
Connect with us by visiting our website or email us at comments@rogerstv.com.